Wayne, I just got to say, it was a big weekend, and obviously there was a lot of airtime for you, your wife.
Yeah.
But for 11,338 days, my friend, you were the NHL goal scoring leader. Does it feel any different this morning waking up? Like I'm sure your life isn't going to change much, but that's
No.
a pretty long time carrying the
Yeah.
torch, and you were able to give it off. But what's it feel like this morning, my friend?
Let me take you back a day. When I retired in 2000 or 1999, it was April 18th. We were playing a Sunday 3 o'clock game. And I remember walking down Madison Avenue because we lived in the city. My kids went to school here in town, and we loved every minute of being a Ranger and being in New York for 3 years. And as I walked that morning to go get a cup of coffee, I remember the feeling I had. And yesterday morning, my son Ty and I, when we went for a walk because it was a 12:30 game, we went down to get a coffee. We went down the street, went for a walk. And I said to my son, I said, I kind of have the exact same feeling as I had the day I was retiring. I'm so excited. I felt like I was playing. Um, and I was so proud to be part of the NHL. And I said to my son, he asked me, he said, Dad, are you nervous about this? And I said, no, everything I did, I'm very proud of. I'm so happy for the NHL. I'm very proud of Alex. I'm happy for all the players who are Washington Capital guys who went through there over the last 20 years. They all deserve a piece of this and credit for this. And I was telling Mr. Leonis, the owner of their Capitals, when he tied the record on Friday night, when they went in the corner, there was 20 guys as one. And I said, that's what makes the NHL so special. Each and every guy was so happy for Alex, but each and every guy felt like they scored that goal. And you can't get that in other sports. We have it in our game. So no, it was wonderful. And it didn't, when I got up today, I was like, all right, I'm still at 894. Okay.
Well, too bad.
And I said to my son, I said, but you know what? They're dwindling. And he said, what do you mean they're dwindling? I said, well, Sid beat my record last week and now Obi. I said, gosh, I got to keep a couple of them. No.
Yeah, Wayne, I just want to tag that. So, it's your 802nd goal.
Ooh.
Gordie comes out, and with his professionalism and his humility, it's not an easy spot to be in, right? And you did such a good job the other night of just articulating how good our game is as a culture and as the family, and teammates. But you know, I guess what did it mean to you to be able to share that with everyone watching? I mean, all eyes were on Ovechkin this weekend, and you really did such a good job being just a great voice. But what did that opportunity mean to you to have that voice there?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for the kind words. Ovi did everything. I said to my wife, the easy job is for me. I just got to stand there and talk, and I can talk. So, um, but you're sitting there, you're thinking, okay, when I was a 10-year-old kid watching TV, when I grew up, there was one game a week on TV, right? Now every game's on, and kids from all over North America can watch almost every game. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know, I want kids to realize how great a game it is and how wonderful of a life it is to be an NHL hockey player. Now, it's hard work, and you got to get a little bit lucky, and you got to get in the right situation. But at the end of the day, the work ethic and the commitment to becoming an NHL hockey player is all worth it. And when you're 10 years old, you don't sit there and say, I'm going to play in the NHL. Now, some kids might do it to, you know, get themselves excited, but we all at 10 years old have this dream. I want to play in the NHL. I want to be Gordie Howe. I want to be Bobby Orr. I want to be Sidney Crosby. I want to be Ovechkin. And it really is worth it. I mean, it's a lot of hard work. You guys know it's tough to play in the NHL. There's only 22 players on each team. There's only 32 teams, I guess. And there's a lot of kids who play, and there's a lot of kids that don't quite make it. I had two brothers that were good hockey players that kind of kicked around the American League and were up and down a little bit. It's hard to play in the NHL. And so I want to portray to the young kids, listen, this is a great league and a great game. And if you can make it, it's really worth it. It's really special. I grew up in a little town. My dad worked for the Bell Telephone. He used to borrow money from my grandparents to buy my skates, beginning of every hockey season in September. Um, I've traveled the world. I've got a great family. I've got to meet so many wonderful people, from Pope John Paul to President Reagan to prime ministers, all because of hockey. Not because I'm a nice guy. It was because of hockey. And so I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, Gretz, you looked great up in the suite with the nice suit on, and Janet looked beautiful, and the way you carried yourself throughout this has been unbelievable. And I hope this isn't a weird question, but did it feel like you thought it was going to feel when Ovi snapped that one home and it finally sunk in? Did it feel like you thought you felt, or was it just because it happened kind of quick, right? You traveled for 2 games and it was done. Did it feel like you thought it was, or was it something different?
Um, no, it was just pure excitement and pure joy for him. No, I honestly really felt like I scored the goal. I was happy for him.
Yeah.
There was no, as a matter of fact, when the Islanders took the penalty, I turned to a commissioner. I said, "This is the goal. This is it tonight," because Islanders were playing really well, and there wasn't not a lot of open ice, and they were kind of shutting down Ovi to a certain extent. And I said, "This is the one. If he doesn't score here, we could be going to the game on Thursday," which would have been okay. We were gonna just drive back to Washington from the city, and it would have been fine by me and my wife. But no, when he scored, it was just jubilation. My dad told me at a young age that the worst thing in life is jealousy, and you know you can't be envious of anyone, and you should be proud. And I'm very proud of what I accomplished. I'm proud of what he did. Let me tell you something. 895 is a lot of goals. Now, you cannot compare eras. Like in the 60s and 70s with Howe or our era of Mario and myself and Lafleur and Bossy, and then the beginning with Sid and Ovi. There's too much change. We should enjoy and relish how good the guys were in the 60s, and enjoy and relish how good the guys were in the 80s, and enjoy what we have now. And 20 years from now, with McDavid and McKinnon and Draisaitl and Matthews, the game's going to be better again. And we just keep progressing. And that's what not only life, but sports is too. Like, we're a way better level now, but that doesn't mean it was bad hockey in the 70s. It just means it's better hockey today. And that's what we want to have, right? Mario was the guy that said, "Listen, we got to get rid of hooking and holding. We can't have this anymore." And that was a big change in our game. And now the players that people want to see, Crosby and Ovechkin, we want to see offense. We want to see goals, right? That's how we were brought up in North America. We want excitement. So the game is better today, but it doesn't mean it was bad players in the 80s. It means today is better. Simple as that.
Yeah, I thought your answer on TNT to my old D coach Bonesy was great. You're like, I would have loved a little 3-on-3 overtime where every power play ended up in the offensive zone. I was like,
No.
yeah, I'm like, that's
No. 3-on-3 overtime, I love that.
yeah.
My son was showing me something the other day that they had a Gretzky rule. And I said, Gretzky rule? I didn't even know that existed. And he goes, look, from 85 to 89, they took away coincidental minors, and you had to play 5-on-5 because we practiced it every day and we got good at it. So they took it out of the game. So in the 80s and 90s, a lot of it was based on, okay, we got to cut down goals. And then the commissioner in the 2000s said, hey, we got to be more like basketball. We got to create more offense. And so, yeah, it's a different game. We used to spend 20 minutes in practice creating a breakout for our power play. And I remember saying one day to Glenn Sather, I said, why are we doing all this stuff? Why don't we just put number 7 on the board and say, let him carry it into the end zone and get ready. But now they start in the offensive zone.
Yeah.
It's game's completely different, and the equipment's better, coaching's better, but it's a good thing. It's all positive, right? There's no animosity. This is progression, and as you guys know, it's whether you get a new car or airplanes today, they're all better, and that's a good thing for life.
Yeah, Gretz, as this is going on, I've been lucky to get to know you through Uppy in this podcast. I've been going through, your career throughout this, right? I played against Ovi. I respect Ovi, but I never played against you, so I was going through yours, and I watched your last goal, 894. Johnny on the spot in front of the net, Wayne. Oh, you were there. You won a battle. Johnny on the spot with the little running man. Did it bring back your last goal, too, where you're going through this? Because I just enjoyed that Selly, your kind of trademark, running man, but it was just a nice goal in the blue paint.
I wasn't around that blue paint very much, but I was kidding about it. And I didn't really think much about it till after the game was over. We were sitting with Mr. Lamorilla was sitting in the box beside us, and I told him how gracious their organization was and how wonderful it was for hockey that they stopped the game and how cordial the Islander fans were to Ovi and the players. And I didn't think much about it till I went down to the ice after the game. I went in the locker room to talk to the Islander kids. I was telling them a story. I said, that video of Patrick Waugh on NHL Network, every time he winks, I said he's winking because he stopped my shot. Well, it's game 3 in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And the kids laughed. And then I didn't think about the goal till I saw Johnny McLean. Johnny McLean's working for the Islanders, and Johnny was my winger. And him and I were together on Rangers, and I said, oh, my God, I don't even know, but I know you're on the ice, but I think you assisted on my last goal ever, which was 894. And, I knew I was done because I had an 894, and I didn't score the last 8 games. And I knew my career was over. My back was sore. I was tired. It was just time, right? So maybe had I been a little better, I might have got a few more goals the last 8 games, but I'm happy with what I accomplished, and I don't even worry about it.
But what is it about Alex Ovechkin to you, the longevity or just the strength and will desire to just score goals? But what is it that you've been able to see the last maybe couple years since he's won that Stanley Cup,
right?
That really stands out to you?
Well, let me say this. Yesterday when I spoke, I was so mad at myself. After the game, I saw John Cooper came, a couple of his coaches came for the game, and after my speech, I said, the one thing I missed out on was Mike Bossy was the greatest goal scorer I ever played against in my career, the purest goal scorer. And I felt bad that I didn't mention that because we were on the island and I had so much respect for Michael. But I was saying, Mike Bossy, Mario Lemieux, Brett Hall, Yuri Curry, the one thing they have in common, and even Alex, they didn't miss the net. I get so tired from watching these kids miss the net. Like, you can't score if you don't hit the net. And if you look at Bossy and Hall and Ovechkin, Mario, they never missed the net. And if they did, it was by fluke or whatever. But what makes Alex so special is everything. I said this the other day, the 3 players that I saw in my lifetime that physically were powerful, had finesse, and could score in a hockey sense were Alex Ovechkin, Gordie Howe, and Mark Messier. Those are the 3 guys that had the intangibles. They talk about a 5-tool baseball player. Mm-hmm. Well, those guys were, I guess, a 5-tool hockey player. They could play physical, they could play with finesse, they had speed, and they were smart. And that's what Alex has. He has great hockey sense. And I'll tell you, one thing about every really good goal scorer, they love to score goals. They love to score goals as much as a guy who gets 20 goals. They love getting 50, 60 goals. Asking Timur last night, I was talking about, there's a difference between 1 and 70. And he's like, no, I get excited about every goal. I said, I was the same way. Luke Robitaille was the same way. You love to score. And I got a chance to sit for a half hour yesterday with Brian Trottier before the game. And he was one of the great players of our game and just a real great ambassador, a wonderful man. And I was saying to him, when Mike got 50 and 50, I remember telling a couple of guys in Edmonton, how do you get 50 goals in 50 games? That's incredible. I think he scored the last 2 in the last 5 minutes of the game to get to 50, which was remarkable. And so people say to me, what's your proudest record? And I always say, 50 and 50 is hard. to get 50 goals in 38 games, you're going to have a really nice stretch and a really nice run. And so for me, that's my proudest record.